going on, everybody? It's Rockin' Roberta, the moment we've all been waiting for, my ayahuasca journey. I got back yesterday, Sunday, at 10:30 a.m., and there was just no way I could really make a video. I wanted to digest everything that happened. Um, it was an amazing experience, you guys. I'm very touched, and I'm glad that I did it. I took today off just to kind of make sure that, I would be in a good space. And so I've just been relaxing all day and, just getting stuff done around the house. And I finally felt ready to make this video. My ayahuasca experience, I wrote most of it down, but then I'll just kind of freely talk about the stuff toward the end. But my good friend psychologist had recommended to her a reputable shaman to try ayahuasca. This friend of mine went to this particular retreat a few times, and then she recommended it to me. She explained to me how much it helped her deal with some PTSD issues that bothered her throughout her life. I was all in. I've had so many past traumas that I've been haunted with my whole life, and I thought how wonderful it would be if I could get some relief. I discovered ayahuasca about a year ago and did a bit of research then. The problem was getting to Peru to try it, and I'm so thankful for this opportunity to be able to have tried it in my own city. A week before the retreat, the shaman met up with me via Skype. He sent me some information about the facility and asked me to follow a strict diet. There are certain acts, foods, and medicines that can have negative side effects. I tapered off Seroquel, an antipsychotic drug that I have been reliant on for a few years just so I can sleep. I'm happy to say that I'm off of it for good now. So that was one good thing that happened. Also, ayahuasca doesn't mix with antidepressants and, certain herbs, certain foods that have minerals in them that interfere. So there's a whole diet that you follow for about 7 days. So number one. So basically, we met up at this house, and the shaman had shown us around the house. It's a big, beautiful log cabin house nestled on 10 acres out in Washington. Very gorgeous, beautiful space. There were several people there that were going to be involved in the ceremony that we met. Everybody was super nice. And the ceremony is to be taking place in the yurt. So after we had a little meeting in the living room, we all went into the yurt, and everybody sat down. Everybody has a long kind of mattress or mat, and then we were to bring blankets and pillows and different things like that to keep us comfortable throughout. Water, tissues, plenty of tissues. And so there was 10 people at this ceremony, so it was kind of a small ceremony, and he explained to us everything that was going to happen. The shaman had 2 assistants, both male. Usually his wife participates, but she's pregnant now, so she didn't take part in the ceremony. She's actually from Peru. That's where they met, so that's pretty cool. So, yeah, he explained, how it would go, and then we decided to drink. So he calls everybody up one by one, and then you go up to his little area, and he says he sings this little song, and then you drink, and then you go back to your mat and just meditate. Everybody did their round. And then the lights go out. They have this tobacco. It's from Peru. I forget exactly what it's called, but they blow it in certain places around. Actually, they kind of blow it on themselves, and that's to keep the negative spirits away, I guess. And then they kind of blow it around the room. And then the lights go out, and then we meditate, and then all of a sudden, I don't know, it was probably about, I'd say 25 minutes, and then I started to see some kind of lights. I just decided to lay down. Everybody has a bucket next to them, and then there was a a really nice outhouse outside. So a lot of purging happens during this ceremony. And one of my biggest fears was like, it sounds gross, but like pooping. I was so terrified of pooping. I even brought Imodium in case it happened. And that was like one of my biggest fears, was just, shitting my brains out, for lack of a better phrase. But I didn't feel sick at all at first. Like, I didn't feel like I needed to throw up or anything. But, once I started seeing the lights and everything, I just laid down and covered myself up. I had so many clothes on. Like, it was cold out there. And I had this big, like, snowsuit on. And he actually asked me to take off the jacket because it made a lot of noise. And I didn't understand why at first. But then I got it after a while. So all of a sudden I start seeing all these visuals, and then I open my eyes and I see like these cat eyes looking down at me. It was really crazy. Like, just a lot of lights. It looked like there was like all these bushes like around, and then cat eyes looking through the bushes. And I was just like, oh shit, here we go. It started to get more and more intense with the visuals, and all of a sudden, I was confronted with this loud voice that said, liar, 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 liar. And I was like, oh my God. And I remembered, there was a recent lie that I told someone, and that's the first thing I thought of. And this voice kept saying, liar, liar, liar. And it was like all this like thunder and doom around being a liar, and I was like, I had to face this lie that I had told to somebody that I know, and I wasn't proud of that lie, and it was like just beating me like with this, I don't know, these visuals of just like doom and thunder and like, you are a liar. And I was like, oh my God, I'm a horrible liar. I'm a horrible liar. And I'm thinking that to myself, and I'm just like holding my blankets, and I'm like, I'm just a terrible liar. And, after it seemed like probably about maybe 15, 20 minutes of that, you're a liar, you're a liar. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm a horrible person. And then, after getting beat to shit with that idea for a while, this voice came down and said, don't worry, it's nothing personal. And I realized that, yeah, like the things that we do in our lives, do and say to other people, it's usually not personal, something that we're going through at the time, when people are rude or they lie or they do something wrong, it's usually not personal. It's about whatever we're going through at the moment. And so that kind of, made me like realize my character defect of, not being impeccable with my words sometimes. And so I had to face that. And, I apologized to the person in my vision for lying to them, and it just all like, that went away. So I guess I apologized to that person in spirit, and that went away. So that horrible "you're a liar" thing went away finally. After that, I started crying. Ayahuasca helped me to see my character flaws that I never really thought about, like all these character flaws that I know I have. I kind of know I have them, but I never think about them, or I never think about how they affect other people. Like those ideas were kind of being pounded into me, like, you have to look at this, Roberta, you have to look at this. And so I realized a lot about my character defects, and I know it was just a couple of things, and I know that I need to change those things, and the ayahuasca showed me how it affects other people by the way I behave. So that was pretty incredible. The next visual, oh my God, it was a slimy pit of addiction. So all of a sudden I'm in this world, and it's like just a bunch of slime, and everybody around me is like starting to throw up and crying. You can hear people crying, and it's like, and so I can hear that stuff, and I'm like in this slimy green pit, and it's just slimy, and I hear chains, chains, chains. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this place? And I'm just like being like, kind of tossed about in this green slimy room with people puking, and I, like we were all connected in this slime. And I heard these rattling chains that were so loud. And the crazy thing that I wanted to mention too, in the middle of all of this, the shaman and his assistants, they are taking ayahuasca as well. And I didn't know that they were going to be taking ayahuasca. And their work is like, they can see the energy coming from different people. So they'll be checking on people. They're like the guardian angels of this experience, and every once in a while I'd get a tap, 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 Roberta, are you okay? And I'd be like, yeah. And then they were there with me in the experience. And like the shaman, it was almost like I thought, I felt at the time like the shaman knew exactly what I was going through. Like he could see my own visuals. I realized later that that's not the case, but they're in this dimension with you. It's so crazy. And I was in hell. All of a sudden my wrists are locked in these handcuffs, and I hear addiction, 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 addiction. And I'm like, oh my God, this is addiction. This is addiction. And I'm in hell, and people are crying and throwing up and bleh, and I'm just being tossed around. And I hear this voice that says, face your addiction, face your addiction, face your addiction. And I'm like, oh my God. And all of a sudden I get all of this anxiety and like this pain and terror, and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, I get it. This is the slimy pit of hell called addiction. I get it. And I'd start to get it, but I really didn't get it. So because I really didn't get it, it was like the thoughts and the visions were torturing me more, until finally it's clicked. And I was like, addiction is, I'm chained to the hell of addiction. And once I got that idea and I said, I get this now, I get what I'm doing, I get what addiction is all about. Once I said that in my mind, that scene went away. It took me down a path through my bowels. Ayahuasca took me through my bowels and was showing me what I was doing to my bowels from all the medications that I've taken throughout the years. It literally took me down the tubing of my intestines down through my bowels, and it showed me how stuck I was, and it showed me all the emotions and the pain and the defeat. I kept saying, I'm defeated by addiction, I'm defeated by addiction. And it showed me how like inflamed my bowels were. And I had no idea that I had issues with my bowels. But you know what? I can never take a shit because I'm always on some fucking medication. And it's not something you think about like, oh, this is really fucking me up. You're just like, oh, I'm constipated, and you go on about your day, right? Well, this ayahuasca vision showed me what I was doing to my bowels. I've been fucking my bowels up. That's how people end up with colon cancer. And that was one of the visions. Like, this is how people get sick. And this voice is like, this is how people get sick, by stuffing all of this, in their bodies. And around that time, I started to feel like I needed to go poo. And I was like, oh, hell no, I'm not getting up. I'm not getting up. I'm not going outside. There's no fucking way. Because I was like at the peak of this, journey. And I was like, hell no, I'm not going out there. And so it was kind of gurgling. I could hear my intestines like, And so I still laid there for a while, and you become out of body where you're not feeling your body so much. So I went back up in my head, and all of a sudden I got this just clenching grasp of anxiety. And I felt it in my solar plexus, and just this crippling anxiety. And And I was told, face your anxiety, face your anxiety, face it, don't run from it, face it. And so I faced it. And the ayahuasca showed me what the anxiety was doing to my heart. And then I would start to get it, but I really wouldn't get it. And then it would like crash me with more anxiety. And I was like, and it would say, don't react, just feel it, just feel it, just feel it. And I would feel it. And it showed me my heart and how my heart was being constricted and in this knot. And it just really made me think about like what I've been doing to my heart. I was frozen. I was just like, and I had my blanket and I would like put it over my head like a little girl. Ayahuasca pointed out so many things about my life that I never wanted to admit. And, it's like I kind of knew in the back of my head, but it was like, boom, here you go. Then all of a sudden I got like this pain, this horrible painful feeling. And, like ayahuasca showed me what the pain was doing to my heart and my bowels, just holding around all of this pain. And some of that pain came from the terror and the horror that I felt when I was a child. Well, I was molested a lot when I was a kid by a lot of different people. And, I've been sexually assaulted and, I've just had a lot of sexual trauma in my life. And especially when I was a very small child. And so, there was a certain incident that happened to me when I was a little girl, and it brought me back to that time and space. And I was laying there feeling the terror while I was being terrorized, and it was so painful. It was so painful. And then the ayahuasca was like showing me like, look what this pain is doing to your heart. And I had to face it. I had to face that pain because I was a little girl then and I couldn't face the pain. I could just run and hide from it, and I had my blanket and I kept pulling it over my face, and ayahuasca was like, no, you've got to face this. And then I would face it, and then this like swirl of warm energy came in and like swooped me up and put me in this beautiful like tree of life. And I looked like a little fairy, and I was laying on, a leaf. And Mother Ayahuasca, this really feminine energy, was telling me, it's okay to be vulnerable. All of a sudden, I'm in this warm place on this tree, swinging on this tree. She's like, it's okay to be vulnerable. I kept hearing this beautiful feminine voice. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be vulnerable. Roberta, it's okay to be vulnerable. And I heard it, but I didn't get it at first. I was like, vulnerable? No, it's not okay to be vulnerable. I'm thinking to myself, no. And then she kept saying, it's okay to be vulnerable. And I'd start to let myself get vulnerable, like say, oh, okay, I can be vulnerable. And I'd start to like relax my body and let my guard down. And this swoop storm of terror would come by and, take me away into this abyss and take me back to some scary image, as a child. And it took me back to this playground. And I was in a playground and I was playing, and then this, dark, masculine, evil energy came along and, was like hovering over me to get me as a little girl. And I was like, ah, in holy terror. And all of a sudden this like wall like blocked us, and like Mother Ayahuasca swept me up again and was like, it's okay to have boundaries. Roberta, it's okay to have boundaries. I was like, what? It's okay to have boundaries, over and over and over and over again. It's okay to have boundaries. And I never knew what a boundary was because my boundaries were violated as a child, and I was never taught good boundaries, and I think that has to do with a lot of the problems I've had in my life is lack of boundaries. And then that voice came again, like saying, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be vulnerable. And then all of a sudden I had to poo. I mean, there was no doubt about it. I was horrified to go outside and poo. I was just afraid to poo, period. I was protecting myself from pooing, hence the Imodium that I brought that I didn't take, but I had it just in case. You know, another pill to put in my body, another chain of addiction, right? But I was like, fuck this. I'm going outside. I'm going poo. And you go outside, and I put my boots on, and I head to the outhouse, and I'm like horrified, and it's cold. Well, I had a lot of clothes on, right? I wasn't cold. I get into the outhouse, and I sit down, and all of a sudden I hear this feminine voice say, "This is your safe place. Let it out. Let it out, Roberta. Let it out." And I sit down, and I start to like poo, but I'm afraid to, you know, and this beautiful voice keeps saying, "Let it go, let it go, let it all out, let it go. Purge, purge. It's okay to purge. It's okay to let it go." And I did. I just let it go. And all of a sudden I was like, my clothes felt like cobwebs, and I was wearing so many layers. And this voice came in my head and said, "Your layers are protection to protect yourself." And it was true. And I took off my fucking snow pants right there in the outhouse. The outhouse was definitely my safe place. So I take off these pants, and I finish, and then I go back to the yurt, and then one of the assistant shaman guys were out there, and he was like, "Roberta, are you okay? Are you okay?" And I don't even see him. I'm like, all I hear is this voice. It was like they were like in my experience with me. It was really crazy. And so I go back inside. I felt very safe with them. It was a hard experience, you guys. It was hard, but it was so worth it. I go back in, I lay back down, and I start laughing my ass off because I was like, bah, why was I afraid to shit? Like, what was my problem? Why was I afraid to poop? And I was just started laughing my ass off about that. You know, and then I'd start to like go back after the laughing, and like terror would come again, and then the voice of vulnerability would come trying to persuade me to be vulnerable, until I just broke and I just said, "I am vulnerable. I can be vulnerable." And then that's when the terror stopped. And I was in this warm, you know, beautiful place, and I realized, like, at this point I was like deep in it, but I realized that I needed to learn to be vulnerable. I've always tried to protect myself, and I always thought I was vulnerable, but I never really realized the lack of vulnerability until this experience. And then I hear this voice, because the shaman had told us that he'll, you know, we can take another round of ayahuasca if we want to. And I hear his voice, and it says, "Anybody for another round of ayahuasca?" And I asked my friend the next day, I'm like, "Did that voice sound like that?" She's like, "No, it didn't sound like that to her." But anyway, it was like this long, like crazy, drawn out, like, and I was so like peaking at that point of the experience where I was like, there was no freaking way I was going to get up and go have more ayahuasca. And, you know, I'm laying there, and I'm like, you know, holding on to my blanket and like rolling about, and just, you know, and at one point, the shaman came up to me and said, "Roberta, would you like me to sing you a song?" And I was like, no, I'm not ready yet. Okay, I'll come back and check on you later. And I'm like, okay. So like the different songs that he sings have meaning, which I can't understand. Like the songs are like, it's they're singing in the Peruvian language, but I couldn't understand it, and it's like, and it sounds trippy, just like that. Meow, wow, 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 wow. So that can be really like agitating. But toward the end, it got okay, because I kind of realized what was going on with that. But then I got, let's see. So After all the terror, I was being built back up again. So after all of this holy terror, anxiety, after I got to see what the anxiety and the drug addiction and the pain was doing to my body and my spirit and my soul, after all of that, the ayahuasca experience like started to build me back up again. So I was like broken, and then it started, after like I learned that I could be vulnerable and it's okay to have boundaries, like I started to get built back up again. I don't know how those shamans do it. Like, I don't know how they take ayahuasca. Like, they do it a lot. They do this several times a month. But I don't know how they do it, go into your experience like that. It's like they were there with me in my head. Like, and I came to realize that they don't know what's going on in your head. They're energy workers, and they can see these energies coming out. And so that's how they plan their, that's how they do their safeguarding, as there's 10 people around the room, and each one of them they'll be on it, and they work together in conjunction, so they see like energy and like colors coming out from these people's bodies, and then that's when they go to them and check on them and make sure they're okay and everything. Ayahuasca kept trying to bring more lessons, but I had been through so much. I was begging to come down. At that point, I don't even know how long it was. It was like hour 3 or something like that. I was just like, I need to come down. I was like, ayahuasca, please bring me down. And these like visions would slip up, and like of more things that I needed to work on. And then I'd hear a voice say, do you want to work on some more? Do you want to work on some more issues? And I was like, no, I can't take any more of this. I was really worried that, one of my biggest concerns when I talked to the shaman originally, because people will go to Peru and they do this 5 consecutive days in a row. And I was worried that I would do it one time and then get stuck somewhere I didn't want to be, but I feel fantastic. So it was obvious to me there are more issues they were trying to creep up, and I was like, no, I just want to come down. I said, I will work on this another day. It was just so intense. Like, this is not a recreational drug. This is there's something to this. This is not something you take to get high and be like, yeah, man, this is fucking crazy and intense. And I got a lot of work done. I feel like I got about 10 years of therapy in like 4 days, in 4 hours. And I just have a completely different outlook on my life. And, a few really important issues with my life. You guys have been through this, on this journey with me on, trying to get off Suboxone and stuff. But I never really took a look at my addiction and what it was really doing to me. Like, I knew it was killing me, but I didn't know how bad. I didn't know what it was doing to my intestines. I didn't know what it was doing to my heart. I didn't know what all this anxiety and depression and terror and pain and fear from things that have happened in my life, and harboring and closing myself and locking myself in and protecting myself, not allowing myself to be vulnerable, and not having boundaries, letting all this shit in, and then it's remarkable. It's remarkable, the experience that I went through. There's a lot of stigma on this. This is not something I would just try randomly. This is something that you definitely need to work with somebody who is like knows what they're doing. This is not something you would ever want to do by yourself. It's terrifying, and you need, somebody who is caring and experienced to like help you through it, because I've done a lot of hallucinogenics in my day, and this was nothing like any of them. There was similar visuals, like it's similar to acid in like the visual sense. And, with acid, there are learning lessons and stuff, but you kind of forget them. Like, you're not, I don't know. I can't even explain some of the visuals either. Like, at one point when I was dealing with my anxiety part of it, I was in a room, and it was like cards, like kings and queens on the cards, a deck of cards. Like, there was all these like crazy, like intricate kings and queens and jacks and jokers, and like that was when I was in my anxiety mode. one of my friends asked me, will I do this again? And I said, you know, if I get the opportunity, yes, I absolutely will do this again. I'm not recommending this space. It's kind of, I'm not recommending it to anybody I know at this point. It's a small group. It's a small community of people, and it needs to be protected. But I definitely, you know, if you get the opportunity to do something like this and you're dealing with a lot of like PTSD and depression and anxiety and, you know, horrible shit that's happened to you in your life and addiction, like I totally recommend it. I do not condone the use of legal or illegal drugs, but do I recommend it to somebody? It depends on the person. It depends on the situation. You know, I was really lucky to fall in the hands of these people. Milo was in the litter box. That's what that noise was. So yeah, there's another opportunity to do this again in January, but I think I'm going to have to go to Arizona. Well, I know I'm going to Arizona for sure, so I think I'm going to miss it, unfortunately. But yeah, you guys, I am blown away. I am completely blown away. I remember in the midst of my experience, too, I was saying, wow, I was like, how am I going to explain this? I'm like, how am I going to explain to people the importance of what happened here? There's no way to describe it or explain it. It's one of the most beautiful things I could have gone through, and there were so many more things that happened. I can't even go into it, like, you know. And then like next to me was my friend, and I was hearing some of what she was going through, you know, and like I was like rooting her on in my head, you know, like just hearing some of that, like that pain come out, and seeing, you know, her and her husband, like everybody, were all just elated the next day, like, wow, this was, you know. And you're not high the next day. You end up falling asleep, and then we woke up in the morning, and the sunrise was gorgeous. You could see Mount Rainier, and I was just like, wow, what an amazing experience, you know. And these people are like so kind and so gifted, and they really want to help people. I'm so glad I did this. I feel like a completely different person. So it's going to take forever for this video to download. God, Milo, he was like me in the outhouse the other night. So there you go, you guys. There you have it. I hope everybody's doing well, and I will talk to y'all very soon. Bye.